I never thought my life would take such a drastic turn. For years, my husband Jack and I had built what we believed was a solid and stable relationship. We had a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, steady jobs, and a routine that, although predictable, gave us security, or at least that's what I thought. I clearly remember the day when everything started to change. It was a Saturday morning, and I was watering the plants in the front yard when a moving truck stopped in front of the neighboring house. It had been vacant for months, and I was glad we finally had new neighbors. That's when I saw him for the first time, tall, with dark hair and piercing green eyes, with a smile that lit up his entire face. He approached the fence separating our properties and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Ryan, I just moved in," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome," I replied, feeling an inexplicable tingle as I shook his hand. "I'm Sarah, my husband Jack, and I have been living here for 5 years." We chatted for a few more minutes, and I offered to help him if he needed anything. When I returned home, I was surprised to find myself thinking about how pleasant that brief encounter had been. The following days passed. Normally, Jack and I continued our usual routine. Hurried breakfasts, long work days, dinners in front of the TV, and increasingly scarce conversations. I hadn't realized how emotionally distant we had become. One afternoon, as I was returning from the grocery store, I ran into Ryan on the sidewalk. He offered to help me with the bags, and without thinking too much, I accepted. As we walked towards my house, we chatted animatedly about our jobs and hobbies. I was surprised to discover how much we had in common. We both loved photography, enjoyed long walks in nature, and shared a taste for Italian cuisine. "We should organize a dinner someday," Ryan suggested with a knowing smile. "I could prepare my famous pesto pasta." "Sounds great," I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and guilt for how much I liked the idea. From that moment on, our encounters became more frequent. Sometimes we crossed paths when we went running in the mornings. Other times we coincided at the neighborhood grocery store. Every conversation with Ryan made me feel more alive, more listened to. It was as if he was awakening a part of me that had been asleep for a long time. One night, while having dinner with Jack, I tried to share my enthusiasm for a photography exhibition I had discovered thanks to Ryan. "Honey, what do you think about going to see that exhibition this weekend?" I suggested. Hopefully, Jack barely looked up from his phone. "This weekend? I have to finish a report for Monday, maybe another time," he replied distractedly. I felt a pang of disappointment. It wasn't the first time Jack had rejected my proposals, but this time it hurt more than usual. I realized how much I missed sharing special moments with my husband. Days passed, and I found myself increasingly attracted to Ryan. His presence brightened my days, his messages made me smile, and our conversations became deeper and more personal. I tried to convince myself that we were just good friends, but deep down, I knew something more was growing between us. One rainy afternoon, while Jack was on a business trip, Ryan invited me for coffee at his house. I hesitated for a moment, aware that being alone with him could be dangerous. But the temptation was stronger, and I accepted. His house was cozy and full of details that reflected his personality. Framed photographs adorned the walls, art books were piled on the shelves, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. We sat on the couch, steaming cups in hand, and began to chat. The conversation flowed naturally, moving from trivial topics to deeper issues. Ryan told me about his divorce, the pain he had experienced, and how he had learned to rediscover himself. I, in turn, told him about my postponed dreams, how routine had gradually extinguished my passion for life. "Sarah," Ryan said, looking at me intensely, "you're an incredible woman. You deserve to be happy, to pursue your dreams." His words moved me deeply. It had been so long since anyone had made me feel so special, so valued. Without realizing it, tears began to roll down my cheeks. Ryan moved closer and gently wiped them away with his fingers. Time seemed to stop. Our faces were so close that I could feel his breath, The tension was palpable, charged with contained desire. I knew I should leave, that the right thing to do was to maintain distance. But my body wasn't responding. Ryan was the one who took the first step. His lips brushed mine softly, as if asking for permission. For an instant, all my principles, my marriage vows, my loyalty to Jack vanished. I responded to the kiss with a passion I thought I had forgotten. What followed was an explosion of emotions and sensations. Our hands explored eagerly, our bodies merged in a burning embrace. Every caress, every sigh, every moan was a mixture of pleasure and guilt. At that moment, nothing mattered but the connection we were sharing. Hours later, as I dressed in silence, the reality of what I had done hit me hard. I had betrayed Jack. I had crossed a line I never thought I would cross, guilt and shame mixed with the excitement and desire I still felt for Ryan. "Sarah," Ryan whispered, embracing me from behind. "I know this is complicated, but what I feel for you is real." I turned to look at him, with tears in my eyes. "Ryan, I don't know what to do. I need time to think." I left his house feeling that my world had been turned upside down. How was I going to look Jack in the eye? How was I going to continue with my life knowing I had been unfaithful? The following days were torture. Every time Jack kissed me or hugged me, I felt as if 1,000 needles were piercing my heart. I tried to act normally, but my behavior was erratic and distant. Jack began to notice that something wasn't right. "Are you okay, honey?" he would often ask. "You seem different." I always found some excuse: stress at work, tiredness, a cold that wouldn't go away. But deep down, I knew that sooner or later, the truth would come to light. Meanwhile, my encounters with Ryan continued. Although I promised myself that each time would be the last, I always ended up falling back into his arms. It was as if I had discovered a drug I couldn't get rid of. My story isn't over yet. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Back to the story. One afternoon, while Jack was at work, Ryan came to my house. We were in the kitchen, passionately kissing, when we heard the sound of a key in the lock. Panic seized me. Jack had come home early from work. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. Jack entered the kitchen and froze when he saw us. His face went from surprise to pain and then to anger in a matter of moments. The silence that followed was deafening. "Jack, I tried to speak, but the words choked in my throat. "How could you?" he finally said, his voice broken with emotion. "How long has this been going on?" Ryan tried to intervene, but Jack stopped him with a gesture. "Don't you even speak. Get out of my house right now." Once Ryan left, Jack and I faced the painful task of unraveling what had happened. Tears flowed freely as I tried to explain my feelings, my confusion, my regret. Jack listened in silence, his face a mask of pain and disappointment. "I need time," he finally said. "I can't be here with you right now." That night, Jack went to sleep at his brother's house. I was left alone, facing the consequences of my actions. Guilt consumed me, but at the same time, I couldn't deny the feelings I had developed for Ryan. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Jack and I had long and painful conversations. We talked about our problems, how we had grown apart, the dreams we had left behind. It was as if the betrayal had opened a Pandora's box, releasing all the problems we had been ignoring for years. Ryan, for his part, respected my request for space. Although he occasionally sent me messages to see how I was doing, he understood that I needed time to clarify my feelings and decide what I wanted to do with my life. It was a period of intense introspection. I realized how much I had changed, how my needs and desires had evolved over the years. Did I really want to save my marriage? Or was I ready to start a new life, possibly with Ryan? Jack, for his part, was also going through his own process. After the initial shock and anger, he began to reflect on his role in the deterioration of our relationship. He recognized that he had become distant, that he had taken our love for granted. "Sarah," he told me one night, "I know you made a mistake, But I also have my share of blame. I let routine extinguish our passion. I neglected you. I neglected us. His words moved me deeply. Seeing Jack, always so confident and strong, showing his vulnerability, made me realize how much I still loved him. But things weren't that simple. My feelings for Ryan were real and powerful. He represented excitement, passion, the possibility of a new life. Jack, on the other hand, was my history, my companion of so many years, the man with whom I had built a life. After weeks of reflection and long conversations with both of them, I reached a decision. It wasn't easy, and I knew that no matter what I chose, someone would get hurt. On a sunny afternoon, I met Ryan in the park where we used to run. His face lit up when he saw me. But he quickly noticed my serious expression. "Ryan," I began, feeling a lump in my throat. What we experienced was beautiful and helped me rediscover myself, but... "You're going to stay with Jack, aren't you?" he softly interrupted. I nodded with tears in my eyes. "I'm sorry, I really am. But my story with Jack isn't over. I want to try to rebuild what we had, to be the couple we once were." Ryan was silent for a moment, processing my words. Finally, with a sad smile, he said, "I understand, Sarah. It hurts, but I understand. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." We said goodbye with a hug full of emotions, gratitude, sadness, a hint of what could have been. As I watched him walk away, I felt a mixture of relief and loss. That night, when I returned home, Jack was waiting for me. I told him about my decision, about my desire to rebuild our relationship. His face lit up with a mixture of joy and determination. "It won't be easy," he said, taking my hands in his. "We'll have to work hard to regain trust, to fall in love again." "I know," I replied, "but I think it's worth trying." The following months were a process of healing and rediscovery. Jack and I started couples therapy, learning to communicate better, to express our needs and fears. Little by little, we rebuilt our intimacy, both emotional and physical. We took up old passions that we had abandoned. We started going on dates, as if we were a new couple. We traveled, explored new places together. Each shared experience was another brick in the reconstruction of our love. It wasn't an easy path. There were moments of doubt, fear, recriminations. Sometimes, the memory of my infidelity came back to haunt us, but with each obstacle overcome, our relationship grew stronger. A year after that fateful afternoon in the kitchen, Jack surprised me with a special dinner at home. He had cooked my favorite dish and decorated the dining room with candles and flowers. "Sarah," he said, kneeling in front of me, "this year has been the hardest of our lives, but it has also been the year we've grown the most, when I've really learned to value you and love you. I want to renew our vows. Would you do me the honor of marrying me again?" Tears were running down my cheeks as I nodded, unable to speak due to emotion. We hugged tightly, feeling that this new beginning was even more valuable than the first, because it was built on the foundation of overcome trials and a more mature and deep love. The vow renewal ceremony was intimate and emotional. Surrounded only by our closest family and friends, Jack and I promised love and fidelity once again. This time, our promises had a different weight, born of experience and forgiveness. As we exchanged rings, I looked into Jack's eyes and saw in them all our past and our future. I saw the pain we had overcome and the happiness that awaited us. At that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. The following years brought new challenges and joys. We had our first child, a beautiful girl we named Emma. Parenthood united us even more, showing us a new facet of the love we shared. Sometimes, when I walked around the neighborhood, I found myself thinking about Ryan. Not with nostalgia or regret, but with a kind of bittersweet gratitude. Although our story had been brief and painful, it had helped me realize what I really wanted in life one day. While pushing Emma's stroller through the park, I ran into Ryan. So much time had passed that for a moment I didn't recognize him. He was holding hands with a woman and carrying a small child in his arms. We stopped, surprised by the encounter. There was a moment of tension, but then we both smiled. "Sarah," he said warmly. "How are you?" Good, very good, I replied, feeling a peace I didn't expect. And you? He introduced me to his wife and son. We talked briefly, catching up on our lives. There was no discomfort, just the feeling that the past was truly past. I'm very happy for you, Sarah, Ryan said before we said goodbye. You look happy? I am, I replied sincerely. I hope you are too. As I watched him walk away with his family, I felt a deep sense of closure. The chapter of my life that I had shared with Ryan was definitely closed, but it had left valuable lessons. That night, as Jack and I put Emma to bed, I felt a wave of love and gratitude. I looked at my husband, the man who had been willing to forgive and fight for our love, and realized how fortunate I was. I love you, I whispered, hugging him tightly. And I love you, he replied, kissing my forehead, always. At that moment, surrounded by the warmth of my family, I understood that true love isn't perfect or free of problems. It's constant work, a daily choice to forgive, grow, and love, despite difficulties. My affair with Ryan had been a jolt, an awakening that forced Jack and me to face our problems and rediscover our love. Although the path had been painful, it had led us to a better, stronger, and more authentic place. As I fell asleep that night, embraced by Jack, and with the soft sound of Emma's breathing on the baby monitor, I felt at peace. I had made mistakes. I had caused pain. But I had also learned, grown, and finally found my way back to true love. Life isn't always easy or straightforward. Sometimes we take detours, we get a little lost, but if we have the courage to face our mistakes, to fight for what really matters, we can find a deeper and more meaningful happiness than we ever imagined. And so, with my heart full of gratitude and hope, I closed my eyes, ready to face any challenge the future might bring, knowing that I had the love and strength to overcome it. My story of infidelity and redemption had come to an end, but my love story, the true one, the one that mattered, continued to be written every day, and I couldn't wait to see what new pages destiny had in store for us.